Hey guys, it's Kate, and today I have some good news and some bad news. So let's start with the bad news before we get on with the tutorial. The bad news is I cracked my phone bad, and literally the screen didn't work at all. But now I managed to actually get it working for a bit. If I continue pressing on the button to unblock it. So half of the screen works, and that is pretty awesome because I actually managed to shoot another video yesterday, so yay! And I will be talking about this video today in this video here. And the good news is I am going to continue making my videos even with the cracked phone. So hopefully I'll manage to get a new phone or a new camera, because I've actually seen a webcam that is around like 70 pounds, I think, but yeah, we're gonna get there. So for now, I'm gonna be trying to make videos with my phone. I hope that you will like the videos that I'm gonna be posting, because I have so many new ideas in my head, and also ideas for very and total complete beginners in pastels. So that is an awesome thing. And today we're gonna do a very, very simple tutorial for everyone who's just starting with pastels. Even if you're not just starting with pastels, it's a really fun thing to do, and it takes a very, very short time to actually complete a painting like this. So I will show you how to do a galaxy sky with a silhouette of a deer. So you can find the reference photo of this deer in particular that I did on Pixabay. So if you Google deer silhouette, you will find it. And you can use it the same way as I did, or you can choose another animal, whatever you like, and we're gonna make this tutorial together. So let's get started. So let's start with the supplies that we will need for this tutorial. I will be using these colors of pastels. It's approximately 6 or 5 colors depending on how many colors you want in your painting, and I go from lightest to the darkest. I'm not using white, I'm using a very, very pale pink, but if you don't have a very, very pale pink, you can also use white for the brightest part of your sky. And also a black pastel for the black silhouette of the rock and the trees and the deer. I'm also using a black pastel pencil. It can be any brand, so don't worry if you don't have the same one that I am using. And pastel paper. I'm using pastelmat. It's a white pastel mat, and it's a sanded surface. So basically it accepts many more layers than Mitons or the Ingres or Ingress. I don't know how to call that paper correctly. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. And another thing that we will need is a plastic sleeve for the documents, for example, or a sheet of tracing paper that we will use to create our stars. And we will also need something circular to create a moon. So we will trace around the moon. I'm using for that a white charcoal pencil, but you can use a white pastel pencil just to create the shape of the moon. So let's get started. First thing I do is I create a lightest patch on my paper. I'm placing it slightly off-center to the left just because of the composition. So it will be a more pleasing composition if I create my focal point, because I will be painting the deer over the lightest part of my sky. So that's going to create the most contrast and create the focal point of the painting. And just compositionally wise, it's going to look a lot more pleasant if it is slightly off-center. So I'm placing it slightly to the left. Now the next thing I do is I'm going from my lightest pastels to the darkest. I already have them placed in the order from light to dark, and just going from light to the dark, creating these patches of color. So I'm trying to go kind of in a circular motion, but not creating a perfect half circle. Before I place my pink, I put some light purple underneath it, just to create a more interesting color when these two mix together. Also, I work in layers. I like to work in thin layers of colors, just so that I can place my colors over the existing layers and create a more interesting effect. If you create the sky, for example, in this case, in one layer only, it's not going to look the same. It's not going to have the same effect as if you work, for example, in 2 layers, because here it was very easy. I just created 2 layers, one on top of the other, and it already looked very good. I'm using my darkest purple to create the top of the sky, so it kind of moves away from the horizon line and becomes darker. You don't need to use precisely identical colors as I'm using here. Go wherever your imagination takes you. I'm cleaning my hands, and that's an important thing about working with pastels. Make sure that your hands are always dry and clean. So if you're working with different values, in this case I'm having the purple that is a very dark value and the pale pink that is a very light value, there is a chance of contaminating your pink with your purple. On Pastelmat, you can still correct it. On any sanded paper, you can still correct it by layering the color, the lighter color on top. But if you're working on a Mitons paper or Ingress, then you are going to muddy up the colors and it's not going to look as light as it did before you actually smudged it with your darker color. So I was talking about the colors, now I'm layering the second layer over, but as I said, go wherever your imagination takes you. If you want to create a green sky or a yellow sky or a blue sky, just make sure that you have pastels of different values. If you are not very sure, if you're completely new to art, a trick you can use is taking your phone and taking a photo, a black and white photo, so that you can see clearly the values of each color. So when you take a black and white photo of your pastels, for example, you will clearly see which colors are lighter and which colors are darker, if you're still not sure and struggling a bit. So now I'm rubbing the pastels quite hard into the surface of the paper, so as not to leave any white paper shining through. On each paper it's going to be different because each paper has a slightly different approach to it. So if you were working on Mitons or Ingress papers, you would use maybe less strength, but you wouldn't be able to layer as many layers as on the sanded surfaces. Experiment. It's not essential that you have a sanded paper for this. You can use also Mitons paper very easily because we're not going to be layering any details over the top of the existing painting. When you're working realistically, it's a lot more difficult to work on Mitons, at least for me. And I'm adding a bit of light to my horizon line just to create the contrast between the ground and the sky. So now with my black soft pastel, I am creating the ground, and that's going to be the kind of rocky hill that my deer is going to be standing on, and I will also create shapes of trees. I'm not very worried about the tree details as such at the moment. I will be adding those as the last thing to the painting. Most importantly is that I kind of create my composition and I place the trees where I want them to be. Also, I wanted to say that I decided to do this video in real time because it was quite short. It's a very, very fast painting to do. So these kind of paintings, the galaxy skies and different other paintings that I have in mind are very fast to do. And if you like it, please let me know, or maybe you have some other ideas. I would really like to hear them in the comments. Also, if you have any questions, do ask them in the comments. Or maybe you would like to see some other animals in the galaxy sky setting also. I am rubbing in my black into the paper, and I'm making sure that the paper doesn't shine through because I want it to be really, really dark. For this, you also need a very soft pastel. So the softer your pastel is, probably the darker it's going to get. Speaking about pastels, I cannot recommend highly enough Kohinoor pastels. So if you're working on a budget, if you're not doing this professionally, because I have different sets of pastels that cost seriously a fortune. So I'm slowly building my collection. But if you are not doing this for work, if you are doing it for fun and you would like to paint on a budget and still have vibrant, beautiful colors, so instead of buying some very, very cheap pastels, I would suggest you buy Kohinoors, which are very cheap compared to other artist brand pastels, and they have a very nice selection of colors. They come in different sets. There are extra soft ones and soft pastels. Those are amazing, and in fact here I'm using some of my Kohinoor pastels. Some of these colors are Kohinoors. So now what I'm doing is I outline my moon using the tape that I am actually using to tape my paintings to the board. And now with a soft pastel, the same one that I used, the same pale pink that I used for my lightest area of the sky, I am outlining my moon. Most importantly is that I have one edge very hard and the other one I will blend it out and make it soft. I'm also adding some patches to create these kind of crater-like shapes on the moon. And now I'm blending out the inner side of the moon, and I'm also blending out those patches of light that I did to create these kind of craters on top of the moon. Now I will show you how to create stars. I'm taking this light pastel that I used for the moon in the lightest patch, and I'm just scraping the dust of pastel onto my paper with my fingernail. You would think that maybe the pastel dust is going to fall off the paper if you move the painting, but this is where our sleeve comes in. So I'm placing it on top of my painting and just rubbing it in with my hand. So this is going to kind of press the stars that we created by scraping the pastel onto the paper into the surface of the paper, and they will not fall off. There we go. Now the thing that's lacking is some bigger stars, some brighter stars in the sky. So to create those, I am tapping slightly my pastel on the paper and rubbing it in with my finger just to create this kind of halo around the star. To add brighter stars, I am tapping my pastel softly onto the paper and creating these kind of larger, brighter stars that shine through the distance. So now I'm happy with my sky, it's done, and the only thing that's missing is a falling star. So what I'm doing is I'm placing my pastel onto the paper and just flicking it to the direction where the star is going to be falling from. And there we go, there's a falling star. Now I'm going to draw out a deer, and I'm using a reference from Pixabay and just following the silhouette that I see of the deer. If you are new to drawing, then it's a lot easier to draw out a silhouette based on a black silhouette instead of just drawing it from a photo of a deer, because you can get kind of stuck in the details of the deer itself. It's a lot easier to work from a silhouette. Also, you don't have to work from drawing, you can work from tracing. So you can print out an image of the silhouette, and if you don't feel very comfortable of drawing a deer, you can print out the silhouette, cut it out, and just trace around it. I'm using a black pastel pencil. This is a pastel pencil by Conte. And another thing that I wanted to say is that I have a video that talks about pastel pencils and how to get those lightest lights and darkest darks, and you can see how light is the pastel pencil compared to the soft pastel that we applied underneath the deer. So I'm going to pass over it with my soft pastel, because soft pastel is going to always look, the black of soft pastel is going to always look darker than the pastel pencil. So that's a great tip to know, because the more contrast you get in your painting, the more interesting it's going to look. And in this case, I really want my deer to stand out on the lightest patch of my sky. So it has to be very, very black dark. If you would like to draw another kind of animal, that's also great. On Pixabay, there's a huge amount of different silhouettes of animals, or you can just take a photo, as I said, and work from a photo. Try out different animals. I'd like to see those as well. If you can tag me on Instagram or on Facebook, I'm really curious to see your skies with your animals. And now I'm passing with my black pastel over the deer, making sure that I don't go over the lines, over the contour lines that I drew in. So you can see how much darker it's going to look compared to the pencil. I'm blowing off the dust of the pastel just to be sure that I don't smudge it onto my lighter sky. It's not a very good idea to blow the dust off. I don't do it very often, but when it's a part like this where I'm really careful not to smudge my lightest lights, I just blow it off. You can also take your painting and kind of throw the dust off and make sure that it's not going to contaminate your lightest parts. Then I'm using this is another pastel pencil. I just wanted to see how it behaves. It's a pastel pencil by Kohinoor, and it's a wonderful pencil. I really love Kohinoor art supplies, especially the pastels. They are amazing. If you are working on a budget, then Kohinoor pastels are the way to go. They are really vibrant and artist grade and have a very good light fastness to them, so you can keep your works and you can put them in frames and they will not fade. So now I'm taking again my Conte pencil, because to be honest it didn't make much difference, the Kohinoor or the Conte pencil, so they are quite soft, both of them, and I am creating the antlers. Again, I'm looking at my reference photo. I'm not trying to invent the bicycle here, just looking at the reference photo and drawing in what I see. Also, if you've noticed, I placed my deer just slightly off center. Speaking about composition of your paintings, try not to place stuff in the center of your paintings. So there's a lot, like we can talk for a very long time. I think I'm gonna create another video about compositions, how to compose your painting and where to put the elements of the painting. But in this case, I just want to say that if you place your object, the focal point of your painting, slightly off center, it's going to look more pleasing than if you were to put it completely directly in the middle. So now I'm going back to my trees. I am not too worried that they are not going to be too dark on the tips of the branches, because I already drew them in with a soft pastel, so kind of the center of the tree is going to be dark enough, but the branches, they can be a bit lighter because they consist of needles and they let some light through them. So even if they're a bit lighter, it's great because it's going to just create this kind of a more believable tree. And I'm using my pastel pencil and drawing out the trees. I'm not following the photo reference exactly as it is. I'm just trying to create a more pleasing composition. So I'm just looking at the trees just to get the idea of how the branches are growing, but I can place the trees wherever I want. Don't worry if your trees are not exactly as you see them on the reference photo. So I'm going to finish up the trees, and I just wanted to say, let me know in the comments if you like these kind of videos, just so you can see the way I work in real time. So you can find real-time videos also on my Patreon. I do wildlife paintings, and also I am working now on a wave study, so I will be sharing that one as well, and I think I will be putting it in real time here on YouTube as well. So stay tuned, it's going to be out soon. And yes, also let me know if you would like to see more tutorials like this one, or maybe you have your own ideas. I would be really interested to hear them. And if you would like to see different animals on like silhouette paintings just like this one, we can do that as well. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel, and I would be really curious to see your paintings just like this one, so if you want to share them, tag me on Instagram or on Facebook. I would really like to see. And for now, I just wanted to say thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, leave me a comment, or any suggestions. I would like to hear those as well. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye!